You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
McKenzie timed out as he lined up a late shot at goal last night. He, to give him his due, came out and fronted the media on it. Here was his post-match reaction to what played out.
Just missed the time. I think we're allowed 60 seconds from the time the penalty's blown to when the goal's kicked. So he did rush me in my previous kick and said that I needed to speed up. So I kind of felt like I didn't take too long in the last kick, and then he did say something when I was in the back of my kick and sort of just went to go forward, and I think it was too late. But I'm not pointing the finger at anyone. It's completely on my shoulders. I've got to sort that out around my process and just speeding things up, and knowing that once the penalty's blown, I've got 60 seconds to kick the kick. And I think, it was a lot of relief after we got that final penalty. Would have been disastrous if we'd lost from a kick 3 points. So something I have to look at, but completely on my shoulders, and need to own that. Sort of said in my previous kick 10 seconds, and then had a couple of the boys like kick, so I got into my kicking process, and then the last one, I can't remember exactly what was said, but it was around sort of speed up, and then as it sort of happened, look up to the post, and I went to walk in I was on my way to walk in, and the whistle was blown. So again, it's something I have to look at. I don't think I've got a slow sort of process. Probably feel like I've taken longer before, but that's the rules, so I'm going to have to sort it out. I think it would be great if there was a sort of a timer on the screen. You can sort of get a bit of an idea. It's my counting in my head, the 60s, especially when I'm trying to focus on my kicks, not that great. So if they had I've played in games where there is a shot clock, so if there was one up on the screen, that'd be awesome if that could happen.
There you go. That's Damian McKenzie after the game last night. He, as I say, fronted up. He didn't have to come out and talk to the media. He did. Among them, New Zealand Herald rugby writer Liam Napier. I thought he owned that quite well, Liam, don't you?
He did, yeah. It was very nice to hear him be so honest and open about it. It wasn't that there were no complaints. He wasn't trying to point the finger at anyone else. And he did say that the Georgian referee spoke to him in his previous kick as well. So as I've seen from a few Australians saying, now you know how we feel after that classic Bledisloe finish in Melbourne a couple of years ago.
Do you think they'll put a timer on the screen? Surely that would be easy to do. Do you think they'll do that for Eden Park?
It does seem like a common sense decision, doesn't it? Whether Mark Robertson gets on the phone to Nick Sortner this week seems like a very simple, easy request, and something that should be done, not just for the kickers and the players, but the fans at the grounds. They're now in Dunedin. They put up the decisions across the big screen. Every decision that was made penalty-wise, there was a brief explanation of what it was for. So it shouldn't be a big thing to have that sort of element there, so everyone knows what's going on.
In overall terms, did you get what you expected last night from these two teams?
To a degree, I think, given the limited preparation the All Blacks had, the fact that this is the biggest sea change for the All Blacks in 20 years. They had 18 new managements, a lot of experience. They had a lot of new calls, very limited time to bring everyone together from the Super Rugby clubs. I did expect them to be scratchy, rusty, nervous, and they were. They started probably better than I expected, and England had the benefit of playing 6 tests this year, of playing Japan, of naming pretty much the same team other than their props that they used against Japan 7 or 8 days ago. So for me, this was a real blown opportunity for England. This was their best chance to strike their first tour to New Zealand in the decades, and they had it to a degree in the palm of their hand. They came out of the blocks brilliantly in the second half. They put the All Blacks under extreme pressure, and they just couldn't quite finish the job. I don't know if you've done the sums, Piney, but this match could have easily been a draw. If Marcus Smith kicks all his kicks, that was 8 points. Damian McKenzie missed 7. Including the timed out penalty. So it could have easily been a draw, and in my mind that probably would have been a fair result.
So what got the All Blacks across the line?
Look, I think they did well to fight through that adversity in the second half, and McKenzie did kick enough goals. Artie Severe was huge with a couple of turnovers on his own line. Scott Barrett with a couple of big counter rucks. They did enough, but it was very squeaky, very nervous. Scott Robertson talked about hitting the wall behind them in the coach's box and, not being totally calm. So this was a real first experience for that whole management team. While there is a strong degree of continuity from the playing group, it is a new group, and I expect them to be a lot better. But this was a very near thing, wasn't it?
It was. So what will be on Scott Robertson's to-do list as he hops on a plane at some stage today, presumably, jets up to Auckland? What's on his to-do list right at the top of it?
Yeah, I think there's some things that the All Blacks will take away from a positive perspective. Their scrum was extremely dominant without getting the rewards. Some real bizarre refereeing calls there. They used them more well at times, probably not as much. But in terms of improvements, getting around the English rush defence, the line speed from Felix Jones, he's a former Springboks defence coach. He's come in and that rattled the All Blacks at times. They target the second man. Damian McKenzie got flattened a couple of times. Rico Awani. They did score twice with McKenzie kicking to the edge for Sevu Reece and Stephen Perifeta skipping out of Ben Earl's tackles to get around that rush, but it just kept coming, and so that will be a huge focus. I think the breakdown, England had success there. I think Ollie Lawrence and the rookie winger Emmanuel got 2 turnovers each. Mara Itoje got 2, so increasingly England dominated the breakdown and the line-outs. The All Blacks lost 3 of their own throws, and that's an area that they really pride themselves on. So those are 3 areas. I'm sure there'll be more. Just decision-making as well. You look at the back end of the first half, the All Blacks played beyond the hooter inside their own half. England earned a penalty and they lock it up at 10-all, and given the All Blacks' dominance, they didn't deserve to be level at half-time. So the All Blacks should be better for that hit-out, but there is a lot for them to drill into in the next 7 days.
Do you expect any personnel changes in the All Blacks side next week?
I think the key one will be probably a halfback. TJ Perenara had that nasty twist of his knee with Scott Barrett and the clean-outs, and I'd be very surprised. He was walking around the lobby today, didn't look too serious, but I'd be very surprised he didn't emerge for the second half, and I don't see him participating in this next test. And I do see that as quite a blow, because I felt like he was a loss, and Finlay Christie didn't have the same control from the base in that second half. So I think you'll probably see Finlay Christie come in at halfback if TJ Perenara is ruled out. Cortez Ratima probably on the bench for his debut, and the All Blacks will potentially have to call in a replacement, maybe Folau Fakatava or a Noah Hotham. But outside of that, I think it will be largely continuity and cohesion that Scott Robertson will want. He hasn't had long with this team, and it will be more about getting improvements from that starting team. The only other tweak potentially, maybe they look to inject Beauden Barrett at the back. I was impressed by Stephen Perifeta, but they did pull him off after 51 minutes. And part of the reasoning given for starting Stephen Perifeta was that Beauden had only had one match, a club rugby match, in the past 5 weeks. So that's probably something they'll weigh up. I would also like to see a bit more punch from the All Blacks pack, but whether they make any changes there, certainly I don't see them coming in the front row, given the way they performed.
Potentially at blindside, Ethan Blackadder is fit, isn't he? He could potentially come in at 6, could he?
Yeah, I think he'll be in consideration. Hasn't played a lot of rugby this year either, but he's well liked, isn't he, by Scott Robertson and Jason Ryan. I think that's certainly a discussion point at 6. Samipeni Finau, I don't think you can knock his work rate, but he probably didn't deliver the consistent ball-carrying, powerful presence that you'd want from that role. So I think there's certainly discussion to be had at blindside. Luke Jacobson was on the bench, but he's not that big, powerful prototype that you're looking for at 6. So yeah, maybe Ethan Blackadder comes in. I don't think you could change the wings. Sevu Reece was outstanding, wasn't he? Defensively, and his work rate, and Mark Talia the same. So I don't think you'll see too many changes elsewhere.
All right, and just on England, you talked about being a lost opportunity. They blew the chance to break a long-standing drought of wins in New Zealand that goes all the way back to 2003. Was last night their best chance, or will the way they played last night give them confidence they can go to the fortress that is Eden Park and win up there next weekend?
Look, I'd expect them to take heart from that performance and improve themselves, but this was their best chance to catch the All Blacks on the hop, to expose a team that's had such limited time together. And I think there is something about Eden Park, whether you're buy into the universal mystique or whatever it is, there is something in Eden Park that brings out the best in the All Blacks. So I would expect the All Blacks to improve in the next week, to play better. But look, I expect England to still be competitive. They're still going to bring the rush defence, their pressure at the line out, the breakdown. They will still challenge the All Blacks, but this was their best chance. And, when you come so close and don't get over the line, there is a bit of a hangover from that. So they'll have to move on pretty quickly. But I did note Jamie George post-match saying, they were a bit pissed off to a degree that the All Blacks didn't know their names last week. And Jamie George, in an interview with the BBC, was saying, look, well, they'll know who we are now. So this is a motivated England team. They're very driven to break that history. So they'll give it a good crack next week too.
Fantastic. Well, I've had a clock running while you've been on the air, and you're bang on the allocated time, Liam. You haven't gone over it, and you had no visual cue either, presumably. So well done.
That's great. You didn't have to call in a TMO.
No, I didn't have to. Safe travels, mate. We'll see you in Auckland next week.
Cheers, Piney.
Top man. Thanks, Liam. Liam Napier there. New Zealand Herald senior rugby writer. Always worth reading his copy, be it match reports or analysis. nzherald.co.nz, or just pick up the paper if it's around where you are and have a read.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.